welcome to Macy's Page for Stage with the incomparable January LaVoy, star of TO's Fires in the Mirror, written by Anna Deavere Smith. So let's just get started. So January, you've been sitting with this play for about a year or more. Could you talk a little bit about some of the things that you've discovered while engaging in Anna Deavere Smith's dramaturgical approach, as well as the themes that the play covers?
Sure, yeah. First of all, one of the most fascinating aspects of working on this piece now has been just the seemingly endless number of rabbit holes one can go down online to find out where they are now, what they've been doing, who became, one of my favorite stories that I tell a lot is that Norman Rosenbaum, who was Yankel Rosenbaum's brother, who appears in the show in two of the monologues, became quite close with Carmel Cato, the father of Gavin Cato, and they would meet up in Crown Heights on the anniversary many years. Norman passed away about 2 years ago. He was quite young. He was only 63. But the two of them forged this incredible bond over what happened to them. And that to me is a very hopeful story, something that came out of this terrible tragedy and this terrible, sort of political, cultural, social tragedy, but then this incredibly personal tragedy that happened to these two families specifically. And to know that those two men were able to find each other and to be able to unite in some way and help their communities move forward is pretty incredible. But Big Mo, the rapper, she's a college professor, I think now, and a writer, and all these different folks. Reverend Al's contract on MSNBC. It's like you see all these folks, and you just think, wow, what an amazing snapshot to have, and to be able to go back and look at the kinds of the paths that people's lives take. So that's been really fun. And then I would just want to say that sort of dramaturgically, there's so much I didn't know about the show. You can't learn everything there is to know about the show until you put the show together.
Yeah, definitely.
Because what we learned about the individuals, and even the things that we thought we knew about the individuals when we were working each monologue, which was the bulk of our rehearsal process. Every day we'd come in and do about a third of the show and just dive in really deeply to these pieces and just take apart every word they said and what do they mean and where are they from and what are they talking about. And then to sort of put them together and have to say it all from start to finish. That's the true brilliance. There's a lot of things about Ms. Anna Deavere Smith that are brilliant.
Right.
But the true brilliance is her dramaturgical creative ability as a writer, it's an ethnography in some ways. It's her chronicling the sort of depth and breadth of a people through their own words, but you don't really get it until you get it all in context. It's all in contact. Matt can tell you that when we first started talking about the piece way back, director brain, when I was talking about, the sort of idea of what this piece is about. And I said, for me, it's collisions because, and that's quite literal in terms of the inciting event, which is a car accident. But then it's also, these two very different cultures colliding in this one neighborhood and the way that the individuals inside it collide. And then I discovered this other layer once we got into really deep in rehearsals and performance, that is the collisions, the orchestrated collisions that Anna Deavere Smith creates to give you these very different lenses on the story. So she's a genius. What can I say?
Yeah, she's extraordinary. and in addition to being like an amazing actor and an amazing director, you're also an educator. So looking at the play like through that lens, what do you think that Fires has to offer or has to teach theater students but also students in general?
Well, the first thing that I've been saying to all of my wonderful students who've seen the show or watched it online and reached out to me and told me how much they enjoy it is that I will never again be permissive when they come into class and say that they didn't memorize their 90-second monologue. Oh, I didn't have time to memorize my 1-minute monologue.
Right.
That's not going to fly with Professor LaVoy ever again.
Those
Forever
days
and
are
ever.
over.
Amen. It's one lesson. I think for my acting students, the way I've been talking about it with a lot of them is I think that as a piece, it sort of turns a lot of doctrine about the creation of character and the sort of necessary preparation for character on its head. And this is something that actually a couple of professional actors who've watched the show have talked to me about is, there's this sort of athleticism of being someone and then being someone else instantaneously and then being someone else instantaneously. And I think it sort of proves that a lot of what acting students are taught, about how to get into character and how to sort of physically prepare and all these things, I'm really now very interested in exploring and committed to this sort of idea that if you do the homework, it can happen in an instant. And this is maybe something I didn't even understand as well or as articulately inside my own process until I started working on this piece and sort of had to confront it. I don't have the luxury of standing off stage and working up the memory of the character or, physically doing the whatever it is that you sometimes do before you walk out on stage. That's all gone. And so to be able to achieve it, and now I'm sort of reverse engineering it as process and going, how did I do that? I didn't just do it because Anna Deavere Smith wrote a play and said I had to. How did I get there? How was I able to understand what was my process in meeting these characters, understanding their physical lives? I mean, I'm also a voice actor, so for me, a lot of it comes from the vocal choices, which sometimes were not my choice. We have extant video of a lot of these folks from the time. And so, that very high voice that you hear for Letty, that's Letty. That's what she sounded, when my mom was watching her on Donahue back in the day, that is what she sounded like. So it's really interesting, I think, as a sort of thought incubator for process for actors and thinking about different, more nimble approaches to character work. And in terms of other students, all students, any student of history or culture or politics or economics, I just think it's invaluable to have this sort of verbatim record of what people in an unguarded moment, are talking about. And when Anna talks about her process, she did this wonderful podcast with Chris Hayes just a few months ago. And she talked a lot about her process, and she talked about how you have to get people talking for a really long time before they start talking.
Right.
And I'm very conscious of that all of these monologues they begin in the middle, except maybe the very first one, except Ntozake Shange.
Right.
Because you hear her considering the question that Anna has asked her. But other than that, I think we are very much sort of in the midst of a person's thought process and what that can teach us and show us about what people hide, what they reveal, what they want, what they think their motivations are. I just think that's, an invaluable thing for anybody to learn about.
Oh, man. Yeah. So as a person that's like a rather new Atlanta resident, welcome to the A.
Thank you. I love it.
How do you think this piece resonates with both Atlanta, the city, and maybe its history, but also how does it resonate like right now with what's happening in the country in general?
Yeah, I mean, right now, if we limit that to like 36 to 48 hours, because right now changes so constantly.
Right.
I mean, just to, to that point, I remember thinking back in January when we had the runoff election, and suddenly we had our first Jewish senator and our first Black senator. And I was like, this is the play we're doing. Wow, this is amazing. I'm sure this is all I'll be thinking about come May. And then in the meantime, like the rest of the world, just explodes with all of these other issues, be they racial, religious, cultural, what have you. So I think it's interesting, right? The thing that I've been thinking about the most in terms of being an Atlantan, and I'm so in love with Atlanta, and I'm so grateful to be here. And I loved New York, and I loved living there for 20 years, but oh my God, Atlanta's where it's at. We have this Buckhead succession movement.
Oh, yes, we do, don't we?
Right? We have this really interesting thing that is happening where a segment of our city is trying to self-segregate, isolate, break away because they feel, as I've read, has been stated, that there are certain elements, there are certain problems that they feel they have no responsibility for, and that they have not contributed to these problems in any way, and that their tax money is not being used for the right things, and so that this shouldn't be their problem anymore, and they should just sort of be able to draw a line. I've been calling it Buckhead Brexit. And and
oh, please copyright that. That's it.
but I think, I mean, how this is what's fascinating to me. If you were one of these folks on this committee in Buckhead who's interested in making this move, are you looking across the pond at all and seeing the unintended consequences that are playing havoc with the lives of the folks on both sides of the Brexit divide, right? But people don't seem to want to look beyond, the tip of their own nose. And it's just, I've been fascinated reading all these debates, and this idea that somehow communities are not inextricably linked. That there's this idea that you can simply, and Tazaki Shange says it in the first monologue. She says, identity is a way of reminding myself that I am not necessarily what's around me. I become part of my surroundings, and I become separate from them. And it's being able to make those differentiations clearly that lets us have an identity. And like, if your identity is Atlanta, or your identity is Buckhead, or your identity is Georgian, or your identity is your religious group, or your race, or your gender, or whatever, the fact of the matter is, it is fluid. It is always fluid. And you are not just that thing that you choose to identify with. You also become part of your surroundings, and you become separate from them no matter where you put yourself. So this idea that we have this level of autonomy and control over what we are and who we are and how we are, it's just this very interesting little myth that we like to tell ourselves, I think. So relevant to Atlanta, I think. Holy cow.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the secession all over again.
Yeah.
So having to, I mean, you mentioned the idea of the athleticism of this process and this approach, the sort of physicality of it, and the fact that you have to literally embody all of these characters. And in discovering this kind of process, this new process of embodiment, has your opinions about these characters, your personal opinions about these characters, changed?
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
So give us like maybe one or two examples of a character.
Any person who was on the Zoom rehearsal process for this show every day could tell you that Leonard Jeffries, the guy who tells the Roots story, I mean, I just loathe, it's the longest monologue in the show, so no surprise that the actor's like, I hate that one. But it also just, he was so mysterious to me. the more they jump around in their own stories, the harder they are to the harder the nut is to crack, right? Mm. And he's just all over the place. And then my friends started seeing the show, my parents, my sister, and he came up every time. They're like, I could listen to that guy talk forever. He's such a great storyteller. And then I was sort of like, oh, yeah, people are enjoying it, huh? Maybe I like it more than I thought I did. It's a very can't keep a good storyteller down. But that's what's interesting is that there are a lot of folks in this play who say things that I personally find abhorrent. Mm. And that was probably the hardest part about learning the play, is that in order to really, just simply memorize the words, I have to internalize them. Yeah. And it's very hard to internalize ideas and arguments that you find abhorrent. And so that was a hurdle. And then once I got past that hurdle, then once I did get to really start to embody them, I mean, the key to it is empathy, of course, mm-hmm. but empathy can be really hard to generate when people are saying things that you so deeply disagree with. But when you can get there, and that, I guess, is my sort of shallow actor story about Leonard Jeffries, was that I didn't have empathy for him until people thought I was good at playing him. Right. And then suddenly I thought he was great. Suddenly I found some real affection for the guy. But, there are so many things that I've found now. Like now I'm finding these connections, not just in adjacent monologues, but five monologues later or 6 monologues before, all of a sudden I'm able to make these connections, and the sort of neurons are firing in my brain. And so I get this sort of excited anticipation because I know I'm deploying something in monologue 7 that's going to pay off in monologue 17. So there's also a sense for me of like, oh, now I'm excited to do, I love Sonny Carson. He's so cool. But there's different types of excitement in doing that, because when Sonny Carson says preferential treatment, those words in his mouth mean something completely different than the first time we hear the phrase preferential treatment, which is out of Michael Miller's mouth in a monologue entitled Heil Hitler. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so funny because, it kind of rolls off my tongue when I'm doing it, but even just now saying it out loud, I get these chills because it's just hard. It's hard to embody. It's hard to embody the damage that we do, the passive damage that we do to other people with words. Yeah. So I find it changes a lot. It changes a lot. But there's, great moments of great joy with some of them and great fun. Which again was something I wasn't expecting to find in this show. Great satisfaction. Some of them are very self-satisfied. And when I can get into that mode, that feels really good to play, because I don't know that I'm a person that has access to the level of self-satisfaction that some of these characters do. But when I'm playing them, I get to feel what it's like to be that self-satisfied. That's kind of fun.
An Anonymous Girl, like whenever I see Anonymous Girl, I'm just like, oh my God, I love this kid.
I love her too. She's very precious. She's probably my favorite just because she has no agenda. She's just excited. She's excited to share. She's got her lip gloss. Life is good.
Right. Awesome. So that's all I got. And I'm sure that these other folks have some questions though. So I'm opening up the room to everyone else. What do you want to know from January?
Can I selfishly jump in?
Yes, you can.
Yes, Matt.
So it's been a while since we were able to do plays. This is kind of a deep end for like jumping in to do plays. Again, after a pause or a kind of necessary pause. But just as an actor, as an artist, what was it like to start again? What was expected and what was unexpected, and just how did that experience live for you?
I mean, I have to say, this isn't a word I would use a lot in my own life, but it felt quite sacred. I mean, I think I have it right here. Yeah. This is the opening night. My agents in New York sent me flowers. And the card that they sent says, "Dear January, opening night. This is the first in over 15 months, and we're so glad it's for yours." And, you know, when I got that, I just, you know, because who am I to be the actor of all their hundreds of clients, right? Who gets to be the first, but also like, yeah, I'll do it. It's me. I'll take it. I've got it. I'll lead the charge with my good friends from Theatrical Outfit who've done everything in the world to make this happen. And our creative team and also sort of feeling like you can breathe again. And I mean, isn't that the metaphor for the whole last year and a half of our lives, right? But those of us who make theater breathe differently. I mean, we're taught, it's one of the first things we're taught in acting school, right? Is how to breathe. The breath is everything. And the number of times this year when I became conscious of holding my breath in a public space, or while I was out for a run because I passed someone, even though I was wearing a mask, the number of times I felt my breath obstructed, my ability to shout, to be loud, to, you know, all of these things that are part and parcel of what we do in the theater, that I always took for complete granted. Because they're the basics, right? You have to breathe, you have to be able to speak, you have to be heard, you have to, you know, move through space. So I've been incredibly aware of all of these tiny components of what we do in the theater, not just making plays, right? Like we all got making plays taken away from us, but also we got that type of breath, that deliberate breath, that shared air, right? That's the difference between watching a movie and going to a theater, is that you feel the other people laughing, you feel them. I mean, the first day that we were in the theater and we had just us, you know, just the crew and the creative team and everybody, and somebody laughed. I mean, I was blown away because I've been working on this piece for 5 weeks on Zoom. And as everybody knows, proper Zoom etiquette is that you mute yourself. So I didn't even know that there were, I mean, I knew there was stuff in the show that I thought was funny, but I didn't know anybody else thought it was funny because I never heard them laugh. I never heard a single person laugh through the entire rehearsal process or gasp or anything. So yeah, it's been wonderful. It's been, but like interestingly forensic, you know, of noticing all the little components. You know, I'm all alone in my big dressing room and there's this giant air filter that is, it's like my Siri. It's like my friend. I talk to it because it's the only other thing in the room. But you know, it's bizarre.
R2D2.
Yeah, exactly. My little Wally. It's bizarre, but it feels really good. And it makes me feel confident that we are indeed on our way back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. A question from Sid. The acting looks so very physically demanding. What do you do to keep your energy up in each performance?
Well, I'll tell you, that 2:30 performance on Sunday afternoon's a lot easier than those evening performances. Not getting any younger, keeping up that kind of energy all day. Because it's a tremendous amount. But it's, you know, there's the energy of doing, you know, Follies. There's the energy of doing a giant musical. And then there's the energy of this piece, which is a tightly coiled spring. And one of my best friends who watched the live stream from New York, our first weekend, she said, I couldn't stop watching you in the transitions because you were you. And I would see, and you were moving with all this like incredible economy. Like all of a sudden you were just like, and go here and do this and da, 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 and then boom, and then you'd be this other person. And I feel that there's this sort of tension in my body when I'm moving from character to character of like, I can't let the ball drop, but I also, I'm not any of them. I'm in this sort of liminal space where I'm not me, but I'm not them. So it's this sort of, yeah, it's like this droid version of me that's like, you know, do the 7 things you have to do and you know, pick up the toothpick and drop the cross and put on the yarmulke and da-da-da and sit and go. So the physical demand of that part is the part where I feel it the most. I don't actually feel it when I'm playing the characters.
Oh,
I
that's interesting.
feel it in those little interstitial moments. But yeah, by the end, I mean, when I'm getting to those last 3 or 4, the energy, I have to remind myself at everyone in between, you're starting again. You know, don't let the energy start to fall off, because you have to, the 26th character has to have the same amount of energy as the first and second and third. So yeah, naps.
Yeah, and then you have to, and the idea that you have to end on Cato, which is such this like emotional, beautiful moment to end on. That, you know, it always,
Yeah.
you know, every time I've seen it, I'm like, oh, that's the cherry on top. Like that, it's the cherry on top.
And you know, God bless Adam, because he was so generous with me, my co-director, who was just took such great care of me. I mean, really incredible care of me. And about the last 4 or 5 rehearsals in the rehearsal room before we moved into the theater, we would get to Carmel Cato, and I would basically just go through the motions. I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I can't do it without the whole show behind it. And I don't have the whole show yet. And he would just say, understood. And he trusted me that I wasn't avoiding a thing I didn't want to do, which, you know, actors are guilty of all the time. But I knew if I don't feel all of the things, if I don't feel all of the rage, the anger, the confusion, the grief of all those other characters, and push it down to get to the next one and push it down to get to the next one, I can't get there. That's the other thing about the way she built this play. She serves the actor who has to make the performance by giving them everything they need to get there.
That's great. That's great. Sid has a comment as well. It feels like there should be a follow-up play based on 2020. Ooh, I would love to see those characters now.
Imagine. I mean, I also think, you know, this makes me think, putting my professor hat on, how interesting would it be to have students build a play like this now, based on
What's happening to them,
and any topic of your choosing, right? Like anything you want to talk about, just get a bunch of people in your life and ask them some questions,
right?
And perform what you see, because I really think that, you know, it's the long form conversation. It's people being able to have long thoughts that allow them to work things out. This is why I'm sort of allergic to social media. And I'm not a Luddite. I love my computer. I love my smartphone, whatever. But these quick hits, you don't get anything done. You have to have time to develop ideas, to stack concepts on top of one another, to debate, to really express your own thought, pain, grief, joy, desires. I think we're losing our ability to do that a little bit, because it's like 240 characters or whatever, and that's how we're actually learning how to express more with less, which I think is counterproductive for most of us. Right? It's good for the internet. Right. It's good for the bandwidth of the internet, but I don't think it's good for these people. You know,
because it's not enough time for us to process it and to like really reflect on it. You know, the thing about the way that, you know, however many characters, you know, a tweet is that that's not enough time to really unpack an idea or an issue.
And we reward people, right? We're making it a virtue with clicks and likes and sponsorships and influencers and whatever, to be able to express yourself in 240 characters or 30 seconds or less. Now we're sort of privileging the ability to do that. And what's lost, you know, is this. I mean, I can tell you, this whole last year and a half during COVID, I would have students come to my virtual Zoom office hours. And these are students some of them have never met in person, right? And I could set my watch right about the 12-minute mark of talking. Most of them would start to cry. for whatever reason, right?
Mm.
Whether it was about their schoolwork or their family or their fears or COVID but they needed that much time. You know, they would say, can I meet with you? Sure. You know, and I could tell they would be upset and they would come in and, you know, they'd be, well, it's this and it's this and it's that. And then all of a sudden, you know, they're really present, but it takes a minute. This is how we're built. So.
I think Brenda might have had a question. I saw you unmute yourself. Brenda? Okay, maybe not. So Matt has a question. What was it like to wear the director's hat as well as be the actor playing all of those characters?
Yeah, it was hugely empowering. I don't know that I'm ever giving that hat back. I've hidden it in my closet and they're going to have to take it from me. You know, I'm very grateful to have had this experience at this point in my life when I felt empowered rather than overwhelmed, and where I felt able, with, you know, a really great partnership with Adam and the whole team, to be able to be like, can't be your director this minute because I'm really working on this other thing. But then also having the ability to say at any moment of rehearsal, hold up, I need this. Or probably the most valuable, because, you know, actors generally, for those who might not know this, you know, we don't get to pick which scenes we work on every day. Somebody plans that for us. You know, the director says, we're going to work on this scene today. And you just show up and you have to do it because they need to see what they need to see in order to be able to put the show together. Right. And I mean, I came in with, you know, at one point I said to Adam, I don't want to do it in order. He said, okay. And I said, I want to do the long ones first. And he said, okay. And so we did the show, we rehearsed the show completely out of order, but and I didn't even know why I was asking for that. But what it turned out was I got the more exhausting pieces out of the way first. So the shorter ones were easier to work on as the work became harder, right? And we were able to do more of them in a day, which meant I felt like I was making more progress. You know, it was this sort of whole psychological game of like, how do I keep myself? Because we had 6-hour rehearsals that were just me and these words. And so to be able to keep my brain engaged in a way that felt productive. And again, Adam was just so like, sure, whatever you want. Well, we could work on only one today, whatever you want to do. But that's not something I would have expected a director to allow me to do if I hadn't had that, you know, sort of parity. And simply being able to just say, I need to stop working on this one right now because it's getting counterproductive and we should move into something else. Great. But at the same time, I would never have wanted to be a solo director on this piece because the outside eye was absolutely critical. And, you know, everything from Adam and I, you know, making each other laugh, saying the same thing at the same time, or, you know, butting heads over a certain idea and having to really untangle each of our own ideas about that thing and be able to articulate it to the other person. And then sometimes be like, oh no, you're right. Actually, now that I've said it, yeah, that's not right. Or trying it and being able to, I mean, it was a beautiful collaboration and I'm incredibly grateful for it.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. Adam's not here, but
we love you, Adam.
and to piggyback back off that stuff, I mean, how do you think going forward this might change or alter your process as a director?
You know, I was just talking with a playwright yesterday whose piece I'm going to be directing at Emory next year. And I was saying, I'm really interested in taking apart the rehearsal process. I'm really interested in doing that. You know, we're engaged in this very fraught moment, the American theater.
Yes, we are.
Where we're trying to figure out not just our issues in terms of misogyny and culture and racism and all this other stuff, but truly, I think personally, it's a labor issue, right? It's a labor issue. We have always asked our artists of too much of our artists and under-resourced them to do the too much we are asking them to do, always. And as a young artist, it becomes a badge of honor that you can do that, right? And then, so we're training our young artists to be grateful for what you get, work 10 jobs, don't complain, you're lucky to have it, you know, all of that. And I'll never forget one of my mentors way back in the day said, you know, just because a plumber loves plumbing, nobody tells them they should do it for free.
Right.
But people say to us, well, you know, I know you're not getting paid for it, but you love it. So, you know, and it's like, that's not the thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, the labor issue for me goes toward process, right? And we have, you know, all of these rituals, you know, you come in the first day and the first thing you do is a read through of the play.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying to my playwright, I said, what if we didn't do a read through? What if we had them what if we told them it's their responsibility to read the play? And what if the first day was everybody has to bring in some content that they think is related to this piece and share it with the group, like a design presentation, but for actors, you know? I don't know. But for me as a director, having this sort of double consciousness, if you will, in this process has allowed me to think differently about how to direct and what might be useful for actors that is outside the form that we're used to, that can be more supportive in terms of that labor issue of how do we actually support the actor, the performer in what they're doing, and not just sort of slot every project into this same template, which is, when you think about it, is ridiculous.
Right. And it's interesting because Matt and I were having a similar conversation earlier, this idea of, you know, what would it be like to decolonize the rehearsal process? How might that change not only the way we work, but how might that change and alter and deepen the quality of the work if we start to sort of question these established norms about how we're supposed to do this thing?
I certainly can say even just this small way that I experienced left me much more creatively open to new processes, right? And that's part of the work too. Like, part of the reason that we don't invite people of other backgrounds or other cultures or other beliefs into our spaces is because we fear difference, right? We fear that they're going to mess with the thing that we like to, because we do it this way, and oh, you do it that way, and we can't use your dishes, we can't use your ovens, whatever. And so, you know, but if you can break down your self-reliance on your own sacred cows, you know, if you can break down your need to have this structure that makes you feel comfortable, like, does a lot of that work for you, I think, because then you're ready to understand someone else. You're ready to welcome someone else's ideas. And I think it's like that readiness that sometimes we're lacking. I mean, how many times has somebody come to me with an idea, a creative idea, or, you know, a student or a friend or whatever, and you go, oh, I don't think so. And then you think about it later and you're like, actually, that's not a bad idea. Part of it is just that you're not ready to receive the new idea. Right. So that's something I'm really interested in thinking about going forward, is how do we make ourselves more ready to receive, and what does a rehearsal process look like that functions in support of that?
Well, I think we just want to thank you for your openness, for your labor, for your kindness in sharing your craft and your process with all of us, both tonight and also during the run of the show.
Thank you. I'm so sad that we're finishing this weekend.
No!